Alrighty guys, how is everybody doing today? This is Shelly, now Shelly Rivera. Um, the names I have gone through, it's kind of funny. Um, Officially I was Michelle Madrano back in the day. That was a 17-year marriage, 2 kids, 1 boy, 1 girl. I now have 5 grandkids from my daughter. Yeah, 17 years we were married. We knew each other almost 2 years before we got married, and then like another year, once we were married, we waited a year, and then we had our first baby. Everything was good, everything was happy. So yeah, that was that time. Another name I used was later down the line after I got divorced, which was Espinosa. I actually used Espinosa for a little while. And most recently, officially, Rivera. So now it is Michelle Rivera. And I am really happy now in this part of my life. And I know that doesn't sound like I'm excited, but there's a lot that goes on into me getting to that point, to this point right here with that name. And we'll get to that. But today we are talking about, and I wrote down some talking points because I kind of feel like I'm going all over the place. But I want to talk about some happy memories. I've kind of been going through some of the really traumatic and dramatic and sad parts. There's a little bit of, joy in there, but for the most part, it's been pretty down. So, lifting it up today, some of the things that I remember that to this day, they still make me laugh or smile. So, I remember we were living, where were we living? Apartments, maybe? When I first started school, I was going to Browning Elementary in Northside. So I lived in Houston. I've been in Houston all my life. This is up until I got married, I lived in Cleveland for a little while, Cleveland, Texas, and then now we live in Moore, Texas. So, Houston girl, through and through. Oh, Houston's ghetto. I can say it. I'm from Houston. I've born, raised, lived Houston. Done some really bad neighborhoods in there. So, but I love it. It is home. So yeah, we were living near Northside, near the Heights, something like that. I can't remember exactly what the neighborhood is. In some apartments, and I was going to Browning Elementary. Had fun there. I remember very little. I have a couple of memories there, like a Christmas pajama pageant. I got this really pretty pink gown, and no, that was at Travis. At Browning, I was in kindergarten. So Browning all by itself, the only thing I remember from Browning is my first kiss. And I told my current husband about this, and he's like, first kiss. He says some other words, but I'll keep those between us. But yeah, my first kiss. What, you're 5, 6 years old in kindergarten? So back then, we didn't have the big computerized boards or anything like that. We literally had to roll chalkboards or roll the big writing tablets. So it was me and this other little boy. His name was Chris, and we had to roll the writing tablet to and from the back of the classroom to the front of the classroom so the teacher could use it. And then after she got done, we were in charge of rolling it back to the back of the classroom. Well, we rolled it to the back of the classroom, and we were hiding behind the little rolly tablet thingy, and he just looks at me, and I look at him, and I'm like, and he looks at me, and then he just kisses me, like real quick, a peck. I didn't know what to do. So we just came out from behind the tablet and went back to our seats. I don't know if I ever told anybody that. I know I told my ex-husband, and I know maybe I mentioned it with my kids, and I know I've told CJ, and I don't think he finds it very funny. I think it's funny, but you tell me your story about when you remember your first kiss. Another good memory, like way later, I remember living again. This was Parker and the Hardy Toll Road. Before the Hardy Toll Road was just railroad tracks, not the way it looks right now with all the concrete and the tollway and all that. This was just Hardy. It was just called Hardy, and it was the railroad tracks. You had to cross the railroad tracks because I used to go to Patrick Henry Middle School across the railroad tracks, and instead of going all the way to the light, crossing over the bridge, coming back down, and then coming back, I just said, screw it, we're crossing over the tracks. And they would tell us all the time, train safety, do not walk on the tracks, do not cross the tracks. While I was in middle school, we did have a kid who played chicken on the tracks and did not win that game at all. It's unfortunate. It was very unfortunate. It was a very tragic moment that I remember, but they came out okay. But it was really, really bad, and it could have been worse. So we lived on the opposite side of the tracks from the school, and I would, walk home. And I'm guessing that he was considered my boyfriend. I want to say yeah. And if he ever sees this, he'll know. But I remember one day he lived maybe a couple of blocks away. So he came walking from his house, and Parker was a main road, so there was cars up and down all the time. And I was outside in the front, and my dad was doing some stuff in the fixing the car or something or whatever. And the little boy rolls up, and he's like, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? And we're just talking back and forth. And my dad comes out around the front, and I guess he knew that it was my boyfriend. Or I hadn't told my dad, but I think he knew, or he felt it, or whatever. The way we were looking at each other, acting giddy and stupid, who knows. But we okay, I don't know what was going on. The dogs were going crazy. So where was I? Oh, I was talking about the little boy. So mind you, we're maybe 13, 14 years old. This is my first year in middle school. And no, I was maybe 15, because it was my last year in middle school. So I was 8th grade, and I was going to my parents, because by that time I think I was staying mostly with my grandma, or getting ready to stay with my grandma. So maybe 14, and I'll get to why I'm getting confused here, but 14, I was 14. I had just turned 14. And so the little boy, comes walking down the street. He's talking to me. We're behind the car. Daddy's in front of the car, fixing the car. And Dad comes around and sees the little boy talking to me. And mind you, we weren't allowed to have friends over. We couldn't have friends over because of the way Dad was. Mama didn't want us to have friends there if something happened. So we couldn't have friends. We couldn't have friends. So the little boy caught me outside, and we were talking, and nobody was supposed to know, especially my dad, wasn't supposed to know I had a boyfriend. I mean, I was going to get my ass beat the fuck up if my dad found out I had a boyfriend. And that's not a funny term. That was literally, my dad was going to be really mean to me. So, or at least that's what I had in my head. That's what somebody had put in my head. So the little boy comes. My dad opens the trunk of the car, and he says, oh, so you're talking to my daughter, what's your name? And he introduces himself. I'm such and such. It's nice to meet you, sir. Yeah, your daughter and I go to school together. and he tells him, "Hey son, I want you to see something." And he opens up the trunk of the car, and in the back of the trunk of the car is, I don't know why I remember, but was a gun or a shotgun just laying in the back of the trunk of the car. So the little boy says, "Oh, okay, yes sir, I understand." He goes, "I don't really want you talking to my daughter. You need to go ahead and go on home." He's like, "Yes sir, yes sir, yes sir." And he left. And for the longest time, I couldn't bring myself to talk to this little boy because I was, number one, embarrassed, number two, scared shitless to talk to this little boy. We ended up talking a little bit longer. We stayed boyfriend and girlfriend up until I went to high school. And then, things just didn't work out with us, and he went his way, I went my way. But another time I remember at that same place, that same house on Parker, I remember there was a year, and I don't remember what it was, but we were sitting there outside, and I don't remember what Dad was. We were just outside hanging out, or Dad was just drinking outside, or what. But there was a baseball game, an Astros baseball game, going into one of their first historic record-setting inning games. Like, they were in inning 13, 14, something like that. We had been listening to the baseball game all day. My mom was livid. I mean, beyond livid. The three of us, which is my brother, me, and my dad, had been sitting there all day doing absolutely nothing but listening to the game. And Dad was drinking, and it was fun. It was fun. And I remember that. And I remember that was a fun time because I ended up loving baseball so much. My kids ended up, playing ball. My son ended up playing, ball with his dad. My daughter, got into softball. So we were a baseball family later on, coming from some of the things that Dad and I and Russ did as we were growing up with the Astros and the Rangers and things like that. So that was another time that I remember that was really fun, was sitting there all day doing absolutely nothing and listening to that 14, 15, 16 inning game. I don't even remember how long it went, but it was something to that effect. Ridiculous innings. So from that, I went on to high school. I didn't really interact with Mom and Dad too much. Mom, picked me up every now and then, but for the most part, I ended up living with my grandparents, my grandma, because my mom and dad were living somewhere else that was out of the district or something like that, or we couldn't afford this, that, or the other, and so I ended up staying with my grandma. And I started talking to a boy, my sophomore year, second year. My first year in high school, I completely bombed. I completely screwed up. I never went to school. Don't ask me what I did that whole year, where I was hanging out, what I was doing, but I was skipping school all the time. I don't even remember where I went. It was a group of us, friends, and I was already basically living on the street, and I would just run around with these kids all the time, and it was a group of us, about 5 or 6 of us, and I hardly ever went to school. I hardly ever ended up in my grandparents' house. It was just chaos, and I don't know how or why my parents didn't know I wasn't going to school. I don't know why, but I completely bombed my 9th grade year and had to redo it because I never went to class. I never went to school. I don't even remember. I try to remember why, what happened. I can't remember. But anyway, I know I screwed up my 9th grade year. So I had to go to night classes to make up some of the credits, the core credits. And then I added in extra, electives in the summertime and throughout the rest of the year just to make up so I could graduate on time. So that was my freshman year. The summer of sophomore year, no, it was the summer of my junior year. Before we got out on junior year, there was a little boy that I liked, and somebody dared me to talk to him and give him my phone number. I dare you, I dare you. I'm like, no. They're like, yeah, go for it, go for it. You know who he is, right? And this person was was not the best person in school, and he was associated with a group of people that them two weren't the best people in the school, but it wasn't horrible either. So I ended up giving him my number, and it ended up that I had one of those stories where someone asked me at the beginning of my senior year to the prom. I was so excited. The boy that I liked, it was a boy that everybody liked. He asked me to my senior prom. And it wasn't until maybe a month and a half before prom that he told me he forgot. He asked somebody else. I had already had my dress ready. I had my dress designed. I designed my dress. I had somebody doing my dress. I had already had, everything set for what we were going to do, where we were going to go. And a month and a half before, I got dumped. Mind you, this little boy wasn't even my boyfriend. I was already with my kid's dad. He was my boyfriend. But we were just talking. We weren't really considered boyfriend, girlfriend. And this little boy tells me, no, he can't take me now. So I ended up telling, the kid's dad, do you mind, do you think, and would you like to? And I believe he asked me too, because he found out I got dumped. And we ended up going to prom together. And we had a good time. We ended up staying in Galveston, going out to Galveston, hanging out, renting a hotel. It ended up being like 3 or 4 couples in that hotel room. But of those 3 or 4 couples, most of them were the military crowd, and they had to go running back into Houston Saturday after the Friday night of prom. And they had to run in Saturday early morning because they had military comp that morning. Why they scheduled senior prom and military comp the same weekends, I don't know. But the guy who took me, he ended up, not being in the military crowd, but he still went with them. So it was all the girls just left there all day, and all we did was sleep. And they came back, and we had, fun. We were at the beach, and we were in the pool, hanging out, and that ended up leading us to becoming very good friends. We ended up becoming boyfriend, girlfriend, and needless to say, we ended up getting married and having our 2 kids. And that was a fun time for me as well. The end of high school, There's other things with the family that I remember, like Christmases with my grandma, my mom's mom. Those were fun. I remember going to their house and everybody would come over. It was like Christmas, Easter, Thanksgiving. We would go to grandma's house, and there would always be a whole bunch of people there. Christmas time was tamales and gifts. Thanksgiving, of course, was a traditional turkey dinner. And Easter, everybody in the backyard were, or in the front yard were hunting for eggs and things like that, and hanging out and barbecuing, singing music. And my grandma and her sisters used to love to dance. So we would always end up putting on the music and putting on their songs, and they would always do the Soul Train dance. So it was always a line of people on each side, and down the middle, the sisters would dance, or the kids would dance, or my aunts and uncles would dance, and it was just fun being there, And it was a lot of times that we spent with my grandma and my mom's family than with my dad's family. And that's a whole nother story as to why we didn't hang out with my dad's family. But I wish I would have had more interaction with them. Now my mom's family, just pretty much nobody talks to anybody. And it's been that way for a long time. I lost my cousin, who was my closest cousin, Erica, a few years back from breast cancer. My Aunt Patti has passed a few years back, and she and I were really close when we were growing up. She took a lot of care of me, and once she had her son, he and I became very good friends, and to this day, he is one of the ones that have always been there for me and talked to me. And no matter what, however long it is between the times that we talk, I can text him or call him, and he's always going to answer me. And You know, my god sisters, they're there, and I talk to them. There's three of them. I have two now. One has passed already. And my mom's side of the family is very small, and it hurts me that we don't communicate the way that I wish we had back then when grandma was here. After grandma passed, it seemed like everybody just fell apart. Just apart from each other, grew apart from each other. And I feel like I've grown closer to my dad's family. I don't see them all the time, and I don't talk to them all the time, but no matter what, it's that same thing with, like, my cousin. I can call any one of them, and they're going to pick up, or they're going to respond in some way without hesitation. And I just wish I had more interaction with them growing up. But I mean, that was out of my control at the time. After I got married and after I went through all my stuff, I should have reached out more too, but I was having so much issues and so involved with everything that was going on around me. I was barely holding on to me. I couldn't see myself trying to interact with the rest of the family at the same time. But yeah, those are some of the good things I remember, the fun things, the funny things. I remember I used to dance the traditional, like the hat dances and things like that. I had so much fun doing that. And in my brain, as I was growing up, and I did a lot of the Mexican American studies and things like that, I saw myself being somebody like that, somebody to advocate for the Mexican American people, for the Chicano people, for the Chicano women, those women who are stuck between being Hispanic Mexican and being born here in America and having that stamp that says, yeah, we're U.S. citizens. And I always knew there was something not right with that, and I didn't understand it fully. I do now, but I always saw myself as being the person that was going to, be there for the Chicano women and advocate for abused women and advocate for children who are in abusive, households and things like that. And things started happening to me that all that went by the wayside, and I lost track of who I thought I was going to be. And I wish I would have pushed forward with some of that. I wish I would have kept studying. I wish I could have kept understanding what kind of people I was and who I wanted to be. And maybe that would have made both of my kids stronger, especially my daughter. But life happens and you make decisions, and you are either good with those decisions or not, and most of the time you don't know what decision you made until way later in life. And I'm not saying I made a bad decision. By no means I didn't. I made the choice that was the best choice for me at the time that I needed to make it. And for me, that was being a mom. My choice to be a mom and having children, and the luck of having one boy and one girl. It was freaking amazing. And I was scared shitless. There are twins in my dad's side, and I just knew, I knew that, okay, there's a chance I could have twins. I love kids. I don't want to have twins. I can't handle two at one time. Let's not have the twins. And then I had another kid, and it was a little boy, and I'm like, okay, that's it. I got a girl and I got a boy, and yeah, that's it. That's what we're doing. And they are the best thing in my life. The best things in my life. And I try to tell them all the time, and they know. And I try to make sure that they know as much as possible. And anytime they reach out to me, I try to help, and I try to be there, and I try to listen, and they help me. They even help me with my mom and dad now. So that was my decision, and it was the best one that I ever made. And it's scary watching them grow up in this time. And I can't help them through it, because everybody needs to grow up the way they need to grow up, but this fucking economy sucks. And I am very, very, very pissed that they have to grow up in this economy. But nonetheless, I love them, and I'm happy for them, and I know they're going to be okay. But yeah, those are some of the memories I have. We'll talk more about getting into my marriage. I was married for 17 years. And it was fun and it was good, but it was horrible. And I made a decision to stay there for 17 years because of my children. And even after I left, it was tough. But again, it was a choice I made. I didn't have to make it. Didn't want to make it. I shouldn't have been put in that situation. But nonetheless, it happened. And like I said, I don't hate anybody who's ever come in my life, especially him. Their dad, I don't hate him. For the longest time, I was hurt. For the longest time, I was angry at him. And I didn't want to see him. And I didn't want to have anything to do with him. And I called him every name in the book, behind his back and to his face. And it hurt both of us. And it hurt our kids. But we have since grown. We have since talked. And we are able to be friends now and be able to communicate because of our children and our grandkids. And I am very okay with that. I am very okay with that. Alrighty guys, we will continue and we will keep going through some of my trials, getting into my marriage, and some of the things that I need to say. And I know it's going to be hard for some people to hear, but I am sharing only what is comfortable for me, and I know that's going to be enough for everybody else. Alright, love you guys. Happy, healthy, prosperous, and abundant day.